Underwater Photography Show. As always, I am Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Mustard.
And we have a bit of a somber episode for you guys today. I'm sure many of you watching this already know, but Martin Edge has passed away. A lot of people probably know him from his underwater photography books. It's the only way I knew him. He's one of the first books I ever owned. But Alex, I know you were a good friend of Martin, so if you'd like to say more.
Yeah, I've written some articles about him for the last couple of days, but I don't feel ready to kind of talk about it online. It's one thing typing it out, but yeah, Martin was a fantastic guy, very good and loyal friend. Very fortunate to have had a lot of really wonderful times together. Talking underwater photography, it's all we ever talked about. Occasionally I'd let Martin tell me about his golf. And I really would like to do a tribute every episode to him, but I'm not ready for that now. But what I did find on my computer is 18 years ago, I sat down with Martin with a dictaphone, and we had hundreds of conversations over the years. But I actually recorded him on this occasion, and it was for an interview article about him. Because at the time I felt that everyone knew him through his books, but so few people knew him as an underwater photographer and how he got going and things. So we did an interview on that, and I just ran a dictaphone really as a backup for my notes. But I found those recordings, and the rest of this episode is going to be those recordings. The sound quality isn't amazing. We were sitting in his conservatory. The rain was lashing down on the roof and all those sort of things. It was never intended to be broadcast, but I have to say I've really enjoyed listening to them back to put this episode together, just hearing Martin's voice again, and hear some of those tales. It wasn't supposed to be an audio interview. It's quite slow. He was waiting for me to write things down when he was telling stories and things like that. So, but I think it's a really unique thing that we've got, and I'd love to put it out there. It's actually the first part of a much bigger interview, and maybe if everyone likes this, please comment, and we'll do another one and share some more of the material. Because it's audio only, I've illustrated it with photos of Martin and photos of some of the people he mentions. I've dug those pictures out from all sorts of places, all from kind of taken by friends of Martin. I haven't emailed everyone whose photos I've got and said, please, can we use them in this? So if you do have an issue with us using a photo of Martin or someone that we featured in this, just reach out to us. We'll happily edit this video and block out the image or something at that point. I know we're using your stuff without permission, but I also know that people would be very happy to be paying tribute to Martin, so I haven't wanted to email around and ask everyone. But yeah, that's it. It's a really lovely recording, and the first part which will run now, is Martin talking about how he started out in underwater photography.
I was born in 1955. I was brought up on a council estate in Leek in Staffordshire. I had got no interest in diving. I don't come from any sort of artistic background of painters or musicians or anything like that. Between the ages of up till really when I was 25, it was all sport, totally sport, all football related. And then I joined the police force at 19 years old, and then in 1977 I married Sylvia in 76. In 1977 we upped house and moved to the south coast to live and work in Bournemouth or in Dorset. It's international. And I had a go at diving, and we went under Swanage Pier. I hadn't had any training. I just knew how to clear my ears and clear my mask. Went under, enjoyed it, and then Sylvia and I joined a dive club, and we learnt to dive under the old SAA Sub-Aqua Association guidelines before there was any PADI. At that time And I know where I'm going with this interview because it's all quite relevant to what's coming up.
Right. I mean,
At that time, I was on, in the police, I was on Vice Squad, which internationals know as Vice and Narcotics. And I, my partner, my buddy, my partner on the squad, was an avid photographer. He persuaded me. I was diving by this time in a club off Swanage, Lulworth Cove, and he persuaded me to hire a camera and take it away to my first ever tropical diving destination, which was Minorca. I didn't know anything about apertures or shutter speeds. I didn't know absolutely anything, diddly squat. And while we used to keep surveillance and observations on pimps and brothels and drug dealers, this is all right. It's all absolutely, totally 100% accurate. He taught me the basics of aperture, shutter speeds, and film ISO. And the day before we left, I called into Peter Rowlands' place, which was then at Battersea, near Battersea Power Station, first one he ever had, and he gave me hired me a Oceanic 2000 flash gun, and we went away to
extortion at the moment.
We went away to Minorca. We got there, the compressor had broken, so we couldn't dive. But we spent the week snorkeling at Cala Galdana. I took 5 rolls of slide film, and lo and behold, they all turned out. I think I set F8 and set F, because it was just all manual on the Nick 3. I set F8 and set it at a metre to 60th, and because we were swimming and snorkeling during the day, and on the surface, you're on the surface just pointing down to all the weeds, and you see, and they all turned out. And that was it. I was hooked, came back, got them developed, and I was totally hooked.
But I've also heard you talk about a moment, quite a famous moment in your development, with the jellyfish in the rock pool, which I'd like to hear about again. Okay,
well, from that moment, from coming back, I continued to build up the kit. I had an extension tube from Steve Frink when he was in Fort Lauderdale, 1982. I went in and bought it.
In the States?
In the States, yeah. We did the Disney World in Florida Keys, and we went diving down Florida Keys, and that was the only first and last time I ever met Stephen Frink, and he was actually in the shop, and I bought an extension tube off him. I bought a super wide angle adapter for the Nikonus.
And bought one for my D700.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to work.
I'm stuck a stick on that.
Yeah, it's a modern equivalent.
Oh right, okay. And
I'll tell you that later.
Did
you get that from Frink, the super wide, or not?
No, I got that from Peter actually.
That's all right.
And then I built my kit up. I went from a 2000 to a 2003 Oceanic second-hand. I then borrowed £500 off my mum to buy a Nikonus 50mm lens, which a guy called, I think it was Len Glover, one of the old BSIP names, was selling. And I just was hooked. I was totally hooked. And
I think everyone can know.
And in 1983, a picture of a shrimp in an anemone came highly commended in the Brighton 1983 Film Festival. And it was sandwiched between a picture of Jacques Cousteau and another picture by a guy called Flip Schulke. Have you ever heard of Flip Schulke?
Yes.
And that was like, wow, you know. And one of my...
I think that's something that everyone
all underwater photographers can relate to, in that there was a moment when your name was up amongst all these greats.
And my hero at the time was Pete Rowlands, his mate Steve Birchall, Pete Scoons, and Mike Valentine. And for all Mike Valentine's ego and all the stories there are about him, and there's a lot of people don't like Mike Valentine, he was a really enthusiastic person with people, with photographers less fortunate than him. And he says, "How have you done? Did you put anything in?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got an Harlequin mended." And he says, "Come and show me." And I can remember, I said, "You don't want to see this?" And he says, "No, I do." And I can remember walking the whole length of the dome at Brighton to show him this picture of mine, and he was enthusiastic about it. And you don't forget anything like that.
Yeah. A lot of what you're telling me here, it's very obvious why it makes you such a good teacher to me. You still remember now when someone you respected gave you the time and attention and the feedback on your pictures, and clearly that's going to make you a good teacher in the future if you still hold that important now.
So this second section we have here, this is about BSOOP, which is the British Society of Underwater Photographers.
Photographers, yeah.
I was close. Which was founded in the 60s. I think Martin joined in the 80s, and that's kind of what helped him get going and building his name, and which led to all the books, and that's just how everybody kind of knows him now.
So I found BSOOP in 1983, and I drove to BSOOP.
It's a bit harder in those days than it is now.
Harder. I can always I was welcomed in by Brian Pitkin, and Georgette Dowmer won the monthly Focus On with a picture of a bit of soft coral underneath the pier at Sharm el Sheikh, which when there was only a pier there was nothing else. And after that I went every month. I was still working on the drug squad. It was we were in London doing surveillance, and I got dropped off, and I said I'll find my own way back, and I hitched a lift back because I was so keen to go. So I built my kit up, Nicona's kit up, went to the Red Sea, won Best Beginner in 1985, beat Michael Wong.
In the next part of the interview, I asked Martin really about kind of the watershed moments in his career, the things that really were kind of when the penny dropped, the defining moments. So in this next section, he kind of talks a little bit about moments where it all started to feel like it was falling together for him.
The defining moment was still diving with Amworthy Sub-Aqua Club. Went to the Maldives in 1986, and in 1987 my daughter was born, and this is significant. She was born with cerebral palsy. It was very stressful, and at that time I met a guy called Jim Eldridge, who was a land-based photographer who put together 6 projector audio visuals to music, and he would do the 6 projector audio visuals in a panoramic style with fade edge masks, which is where the term masks come from Photoshop, where you used to mask out a bit and overlay something. And in those days you could get masks that you fitted over a slide of transparency where you could put another picture over the top anyway. And he saw some pictures I'd taken from the Florida Keys, and he said, when you come back I really would like to do a 6 projector audio visual of your pictures underwater. We did 2 of them. We did Sea of Dreams, which was all about the Red Sea, 1984. And then a year later we did Imaginations, which was all about a 2-week trip I did in the Maldives. And we did them to music, and nobody had ever seen anything underwater like this. And I was asked to show them at Bee Soup, and I got a standing ovation. And I was told it was the first time that anybody had ever got a standing ovation at Bee Soup, and that was in 1987. And I did this with Jim. It took about 6 months to do, and I did it in the evenings while Katie was in hospital, and it was kind of done in tandem with hospital visits and whatever, so I remember that very well. We then took those shows on the road, and in 1987 they were shown all around the UK. They were shown at the Brighton Film Festival of 1987, when Pete Rowlands and Steve Birchall won something like Best in Show of what they did. I wasn't allowed to go into the audio visual competitions. Wasn't allowed because there were 6. I followed Stanton Waterman on to give a talk about these AVs at Brighton. And I got a lot of kudos from Kurt Amsler, who he won the overall Best Photographer of the Show award. David Doublé was there, Emery Christoph was there, Sylvia Earle was there. So I became known as the guy who did the audio visuals. And we took them on the road, and we took them into Europe, and we went to film festivals in Europe and Antwerp. And that's where I met Hans and Lottie Ass, and had dinner with them and sat next to them at the gala dinner. And a funny story about that was they were overdressed, so was I and Jim, and we'd all got our dicky bows on, and Hans Lass had got his dicky bow on, and so had so had Lottie. And because we were the guests, and because even more we were totally overdressed, you tend to stick together with people who dress like yourself.
Yeah.
So I ended up sitting next to a bit sandwiched between Hans and Lottie Haas. In 1987, the kind of key moment in my photographic journey, because you will know that a lot of people have won competitions because they've taken loads of shots and they're not actually that great a photographer. They don't know really. No, they don't know what they're doing. Actually.
Yeah.
But in 1987, this jellyfish was washed up in a rock pool at Port Alstock, and I was a club diver, and I did my pictures on club dives. But we used to get the piss, me and Bob, and we were we were buddies then, and he just won a lot at Brighton in 1987. I think he won Best Beginner as well in 1987, Brighton or something like that. And we used to get the mickey taken because we'd go under Swanage Pier and not go out on the boats, but we didn't know why we were doing it. And we genuinely really didn't. The penny never dropped. And at Cornwall it dropped because they said, come on, we're going. I said, no, I'm not going to, I'm going in the rock pool. And they said, oh, come on, it's Easter, you're away for Easter, you know, we're going on the wreck, you know, come with us. No, I'm going to do this rock pool. And they said, we'll drop you off, and there's loads of these jellyfish in the sea. No, I'm going in this rock pool. And it was like I had to somehow try and justify why I was missing a dive and going in a rock pool. And I just knew that it was the right thing to do. And at the last moment, Bob said, I'm going with Martin. And I think they had to get his kit out of the boat, or he said, but anyway, I'm going with Mark. So we didn't go in the boat, and we went in the rock pool, and I got there, and I just got an Iconis 350mm lens, and I climbed in this rock pool. I didn't need my fins, I just needed a weight belt. I hadn't got a bottle, I hadn't got a snorkel, just got a mask, and I took that shot, and he did well in everything. And I then thought, my goodness, you know, this is nothing, photography is nothing to do with diving. It's nothing to do with diving. And then I came back.
I think that's a great quote.
Yeah, and I came back, and me and Bob sat down, and I said, look, you know, these Tom Pot Blennies that we're taking, and why they keep winning things, because my Tom Pot Blenny did very well in '87, and I haven't really, whether it's just nostalgia, but I don't think I've seen a better picture of a Tom Pot than the one I took. But and we used to go under the pier and just shoot Tom Pots, and we shot the Tom Pot that was in the pipe that was 3 feet off the ground, tied to a stanchion. We used to hang the fins up, so it was easier to get around. We'd tie them up to a nail, we'd walk around, and we couldn't understand, and now this is where the we comes in, we couldn't understand why people would take 3 or 4 pictures of this Tom Pot and then swim off. And we then, the people topside, we'd say, did you take the Tom Pot? Yeah, great one to, yeah. Why did you only take 3 or 4 shots of him? You know, it's okay with us. We were down there for 2 hours. Well, there's plenty of Tom Pots down there. There's plenty. Yeah, no, but our Tom Pot's in this great position. You won't find a better Tom Pot than our Tom Pot. You know, and we used to take people to our Tom Pot, and they'd take 4 or 5 shots, and then they'd think, right, okay, and they'd swim and take loads of others. But our Tom Pot was in the place.
So this final section is a little bit about how Martin became an underwater photography instructor and teacher, and kind of how that led into his books.
Yeah, and it's kind of right up to that first edition. I think it was really the second and third editions where the book went really huge. And so not many of us have a copy of that first edition. I have a very prized one, which actually Martin gave to me during the interview. So you actually hear him offering me a copy and me trying to coolly not bite his arm off about it. I have edited most of my comments out of the videos. So yeah.
One of the reasons why you teach underwater photography so well, and you write about it so well, is because, and I learned a bit more today, is that you come from this background that's a non-artistic family. You're in the police force, which in all fairness to the police force, I've got a lot of friends, it's not really a place to garner artistic interest. No. And so you came to underwater photography without really any artistic background yourself, with no photographic knowledge until you started going underwater. So you learnt it all yourself, so you had to learn it the hard way. So you learned the building blocks, and you came across every problem that you can come across.
Absolutely.
Because you did it the hard way.
Everything.
And you also were fortunate, by having BSUP, to be exposed to some of the best underwater photographers around, seeing their work regularly, enabled you almost to kind of reverse engineer what was the difference between that great shot and my shot. Your analytical mind that came from the police force, I think, enabled you to search out what's the difference between that great shot and my not so good one. Is that a fair?
Yes, it is. And what I'm just going to say now is, at the same time as this, we were going to BSUP, and I was asking people the right questions. So I got to talk to Dublé, I got to talk to Howard Hall, Pete Rowlands, Georgette, Mike Valentine, probably more than anybody, Scoonsy. I don't mean I spoke to him more than anybody, but I wanted to know how they had taken these shots that were winning the monthly competition. Some of them, they would just say, like Linda Pitkin, for example. She's brilliant.
It's natural ability.
It's absolutely total natural ability. And she would say, well, I just did this, and I know how to interview people, and I know how to get them to answer questions. And she'd say, well, I did F8 to F16. I said, yeah, I'm not bothered about the aperture, in a polite way. Well, I did 60. I'm not bothered about. Well, I put my flash gun there. Yeah, my flash gun's there. We can't, What made you do it? And there was the conversation about a famous coral grouper swam through the frame with its mouth open. And I said, how did you get its mouth? Well, it kept swimming through. Well, what do you mean it kept swimming through? Well, it kept swimming through the frame. Well, what frame? Well, the frame on my close-up lens. Well, how did it swim through? Well, we were feeding it bits of orange pith. Okay, now we're talking. And but it used to come through and he hadn't got his mouth open. Well, hang on a minute. How many pictures did you take? Well, about 3 rolls of film. Well, what do you mean you took 3 rolls of film? How do you take, you can't change your film underwater. Well, we kept going up and coming back in. Well, how did you manage to do that? You're in the Red Sea, you dive and then you move. No. Oh, hang on. So you're telling me you stayed on a dive site all day? Is that what you're saying, Linda? Sign the state. Is that what you were saying? Oh, yeah. So how many pictures did you? Well, we took loads. Took loads of them. Well, what are the others like? Well, they're not as good as that one. So you've got more than these. It's not just a shot. Oh, yeah. That's a 25-year-old conversation, recollection of a 25-year-old.
Yeah, I'm not going to.
But
also, I'm not sure what Linda would feel about
no.
These days.
But Scoonsy, I used to ask Scoonsy, and I can remember, and there was one about
I regret
light.
the fact that I didn't get to speak to him as much as
Yeah. I said, how did you get that light? Oh, well, you have to do that. I said, but no, break it down to me. How did you get it? And I can't remember the question I asked. He says, I've never been asked that question before. I can tell you. And he knew exactly what I wanted to know. And Pete Rowlands did as well. And at the same time, Howard Hall's book came out, Successful Guide to Underwater Photography. So at this time that's going on, we were doing it under Swanage Pier. Every month we were asking people and questioning them, and Bob was questioning them as well. And because I used to say to Bob, go and ask such and such this while I'm asking him here, and ask it like this, and ask it in this way. So it was an open question. And remember what he says, because we can't talk to everybody during the break. And I really want to know this, so you go and ask this. I'll promise I'll tell you what he says, but so we had a plan, you have him and you have him. And he drinks Newcastle Brown Ale, so buy him a half, and I'll buy Howard or whatever a half. That's what we did. And so this was all going on, and this defining moment of in 1987 with this jellyfish and the tom pots. And then I did a talk and bee soup, and I talked about how I take my pictures. And then Colin Dowie says, we have heard nothing like that. Nobody's ever come to bee soup and talked like that before. Why don't you do some articles? So I then did some articles in Subaquascene, and then around about that time Pete did his magazine UWP.
Yeah.
So I did some articles on teaching for that. Then they said, wow, we've never read anything like this before. And then the guy who bought Subaquascene off Peter, no, UWP off Peter, can't remember his name now, he said, I want you to do a book. And this was in 1991. So I wrote this book, and Sport Diver and him went bust big time, but somebody took it on. But they weren't then prepared to publish the book. So I finished it on my own. I got an editor in Ian Turner, whose wife, Viv Pearson, had won Best Beginner the year before me. He edited it and finished it. Would you like a copy of that first book? I've got one in the loft.
You got a spare, yeah.
Got a brand new copy.
Yeah.
Because you can't get them now. And I hacked it around London. I got on a train and made a few phone calls, and I took it round 2 different publishers and sold it. It was like going into the Lion Dragon's den. And why I've got this, what's it? Well, nobody else writes about it. You won't believe the interest worldwide, but it is a global publication. It's not a UK publication. And it's, for once, it's not about a camera. It's about, how to get the pictures. And anyway, the second publisher I went to, called Focal Press, they got back to me, and a couple of them got back and said we're very interested. Focal got back and said, yeah, we want to do it. One deal fell through, but Focal said yes, we want to do it. And I had to put in permission to be able to publish a book in those days in the police. I was given permission. In 1993, I think it was, and in 1995 it came out.
All right, everybody. I know this was a bit of a different episode than you guys are used to, but hopefully you enjoyed listening to Martin and Alex. If you guys enjoyed this, please leave comments below, and we can do some more episodes about this. And otherwise, we'll be back with our more normal episodes starting very soon. Thank you, guys.